Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening, everyone, and namaste. Welcome to our Tuesday evening study and discussion of Swami Chaitanananda's biography of Sri Sarada Devi, Her Divine Play. Perhaps Haima or someone will
Sure.
let everyone know where the page number is.
We are on page 651, Brother Shankara.
Okay.
2 flowers on 1 stem. That's where we are. New chapter.
Very good. New chapter and 2 flowers on 1 stem. Before we start, is there anything left from the previous week that anyone would like to ask or comment on about what was read then? All right, Haima.
Okay, Brother Shankara.
Please begin.
Okay, 2 flowers on 1 stem, chapter 32. I will read the English translation of the Sanskrit verse there. As the word and its meaning are interconnected, and one cannot exist without the other, so the Divine Mother Parvati and the Supreme Lord Shiva are eternally connected like power and the possessor of power. I bow down to the parents of the universe.
Would you read that again, please?
Sure. As the word and its meaning are interconnected, and one cannot exist without the other, so the Divine Mother Parvati and the Supreme Lord Shiva are eternally connected like power and the possessor of power. I bow down to the parents of the universe.
The parents of the universe. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. So, any comments about that opening verse? All right, Emma, please proceed.
It is impossible for the limited human intellect to comprehend the infinite God. We can try to understand something of God by reading descriptions in the scriptures and by observing the lives of avatars, saints, and godlike souls. In this chapter, we shall learn what Holy Mother said about Ramakrishna, which will help us visualize how these two divine beings interacted and played their divine roles in this world. Though they had separate names and separate forms, essentially, they were one substance, pure consciousness, and they were aware of this.
And they were aware of us. And they were aware of us. And that is why they came to offer us their hands. They are waiting to take your hand. Yes, they are waiting to take your hand. So this is, they were aware of who they are, and they were aware of who we are. And they, as Swami Vivekananda writes in the evening hymn, Kandana Bhavana Bhav, breaker of this world's chain, how great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. So now we'll hear what Holy Mother said herself about Sri Ramakrishna, and by implication, and probably sometimes explicitly herself. Any comments or questions before we go ahead? All right, please go ahead, Daima.
The Shvetashvatara Upanishad says that the same Brahman manifests in this universe through multiple names and forms. Thou art woman, thou art man, thou art the youth and the maiden too. As an old man, thou totterest along on a staff. It is thou alone who, when born, assumest diverse forms. You want me to read one more time, Brother Shankar?
Yes,
One?
that verse from the Svetasvatara Upanishad was one of Swami Prabhavananda's favorite. It goes on to say you are the thundercloud, you are the red-eyed parrot, and so on and so forth. But please read what it says here.
The Shvetashvatara Upanishad says that the same Brahman manifests in this universe through multiple names and forms. Thou art woman, thou art man, thou art the youth and the maiden too. As an old man, thou totterest along on a staff. It is thou alone who, when born, assumest diverse forms. According to non-dualistic Vedanta, Brahman, the absolute, becomes Purusha and Prakriti through its power of Maya, but the two are always interconnected. Shakti, Shaktiman, Abhedaha. The power and the possessor of power cannot be separated. It is like fire and its power to burn, or milk and its whiteness.
And just stop and think, let's just stop and think about those metaphors.
Yes, beautiful.
Fire and its power to burn. You cannot think of one without the other. There is the concept of fire, but we can't think of just the concept of fire. The moment we think of concept of fire, we think of burning, the power to burn. Milk and its whiteness. We can't think of milk without thinking of white, unless we think of chocolate milk, and that's just silly.
That's different.
But so, milk and its whiteness. We can't think of that. We can't think of milk without its whiteness. This is what Sri Ramakrishna used these metaphors over and over in an attempt to get this through our ignorance. That Brahman and Shakti, or Kali as he called her, are identical. He used another metaphor, water still, Brahman the absolute, water in waves, Shakti. Waves, what is waves? Waves is a wave form or vibration. So there is no difference. What we are seeing is Brahman. Brahman is the offering. Brahman is the ritual. Brahman is she or he who offers to the fire that is Brahman. He or she who sees Brahman in every action attains to Brahman. This is what is being communicated here. This is Brahman. Brahman does not exist. Brahman is existence itself. So anything that takes any aspect of existence is ipso facto Brahman. Brahman does not exist. Brahman is existence itself. So if something is in existence, it is ipso facto Brahman. That's why it's stressed over and over that however it may seem to us that there are many on the screen here, at this point, 6 of us, 6 or 7 if Shaman Shashi are there together. That is the appearance. The reality is one, only one. Anything to say or ask about that from your own wisdom or experience, please offer what you have. Or if you have any concern or question, please raise that. Because this is the premise on which this chapter will go forward. One, only one. 2 flowers on 1 stem. I am the vine, ye are the branches. Vine and branches are inseparable. That quote is from Christ. Anything at all from anyone. All right, please read on, dear.
Sure. The dualistic Vaishnava tradition says that Krishna is the only Purusha and all males and females in the universe are in the domain of Prakriti. Ramakrishna said, it is Brahman alone that appears as Ishvara, Maya, living beings, and the universe. That which is Brahman is also Shakti, Kali. On 16th October 1883, Ishan Mukhopadhyaya said to the master that according to the Chandi, Brahman alone is the primal energy. Brahman is identical with Shakti. The master replied, it will not do simply to express that idea in words. Only when you assimilate it will all be well with you.
That is the key word, assimilate. What does assimilate mean? If you take food in your mouth and you simply chew it up and then spit it out, well, you've had the taste of the food, but it doesn't do you any good at all. You won't be well. So what do? You chew the food well, thoroughly, and then you swallow it. The body then takes over and assimilates, takes from that which nourishes us. This is exactly what is meant by manana. This is exactly what is meant by manana. This fellow, whatever his name was,
Ishan Mukhopadhyaya.
He could quote this from the Chandi, but the master was telling him, you know the words, but you have not digested them. You have not made them a part of your experience, of your being. So this is what we're doing together here tonight. And this is why I encourage people to make comments from their own wisdom or experience, or to express their concerns or questions, because this is how we digest it. This is how we make it part of ourselves, so that it's no longer just a concept. It is a reality for us. just as your skin and flesh and bones are the reality produced by the food you eat and the air you breathe, so the reality of your spiritual being is produced by assimilating, digesting, and making part of yourself these ideas and words. Anything at all from anyone about any of this?
That's true, Brother Shankara. If we just read and attend these congregations, if we don't imply them into our life, actually practice them in day-to-day life, it's not going to do any good. That's what Swami is.
We're not going to practice them in our day-to-day life until we are convinced they are true.
Exactly. We have to believe.
This is the process of manana or digestion or assimilation.
Sure.
We have to, this is why Swami Swahananda said to us over and over, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. Change in behavior comes from change of thought, replacing, as Patanjali says, lower samskaras with higher samskaras. Until we're illumined, we're just replacing one lower form of ignorance with a higher form of ignorance. But it is still a higher form of ignorance. It is also a higher form of truth. As Swami Vivekananda said, we do not move from error to truth. We move, if you will, from lower truth to higher truth. And that's what we're doing here, but only if we assimilate it. Only if we make it part of our thoughts that then change our speech and our behavior.
Exactly. Truly, totally agree.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, dear.
Okay, because I had again this Bluetooth speaker and that always gives trouble. But I think, just like you said, Brother Shankara, until we hear and Shravana and Manana and are convinced that that is the truth, we will not have the zeal to practice. I don't know if that's the right word to use there.
Yes, that's exactly Swami Swahananda's word. Zeal. Go forward with your zeal. Yes, that's exactly it.
Otherwise, we get swayed by other, ways of thinking, or until we anchor, then I think the day-to-day checking ourselves is more automatic or easier once we are convinced.
Yes, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, sour toil at first, and then nectar. If we do the work in the beginning and struggle with the sour toil, and it is a struggle. Swami Vivekananda says, struggle, of course it's a struggle. That's the poetry, that's the adventure of life. You just want to sit in an easy chair and be happy all your life. No progress there. You'll spin the hamster wheel of your prarabdha karma and end up no further ahead than you were when you took form at birth. Actually, before birth, took form in the womb. So we must, as the Swami is quoting Sri Ramakrishna as saying, we must assimilate these things. We must digest them, come to the point where we believe in the truth of them, and then insist on the truth of them, which is what is meant by nididhyasana. That form of meditation is a constant, relentless insistence on the truth that is the higher truth rather than the lower truth with which we approached the higher truth.
The one point that I keep going back and forth, and perhaps it's not worth the amount of attention I pay to it, is if Brahman alone becomes everything, where does the karma fit in? Like,
Krishna explains it very well in chapters 5 and 6, dear. Read those again. He says, it's mine. I'm doing it. It's my Maya. They're my gunas. The karma is all mine. You only think it's yours. And because you think it's yours, then you experience it. When you stop identifying yourself as the doer and with the body as that which is doing, your body, Krishna explains it in great detail and very, very persuasively in chapters 5 and 6 of the Gita. There's just every reason to read chapters 2 through 7 of the Gita over and over, doing that Shravana until it becomes a truth for us. And of course, as Sri Ramakrishna also said, even though it becomes a truth for us, even the most skilled singer cannot keep her voice always on the highest note. We slip back into a form of ordinary awareness, not the same one that we started with. It's a higher and more satisfying, a freer and happier ordinary awareness, but nevertheless, it is. But we no longer believe in it the way we believed in it. We no longer think this is the reality of my life and this other business is somehow just my spiritual activities. No, no, no. We come to see that our spiritual activity, we are not a human being having a divine experience. We are the divine being having a human experience. And that becomes a reality for us. So the fact that you're giving this attention, don't question yourself about it. Just keep at it until it no longer is a concern or question. And there's every reason you should bring it up in these settings. You think you're alone in this, dear? Of course you're not. Everyone who's here tonight knows exactly what you're talking about. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. This is the struggle we all have. How can this be not me doing this? How can this be Krishna alone doing this? And this is all an appearance, or as Swami Vivekananda calls it in his talk, The Real and the Apparent Man, a mythology, a commonly shared belief. But we come to understand that that's truly all it is. And by the way, that's what Swami Sarvadevananda will speak on when he comes here. And on the evening of the 17th at 7:30, he will speak on the topic, mythology. What did Swami Vivekananda mean by that? And believe me, he gave me about 20 minutes of what he'll say just when we were on the phone. Maybe not 20 minutes, maybe only 10. But believe me, he has a lot to say about it. And it's very, very persuasive because it is a reality from which he's speaking. And it was just so. Please, whether by Zoom or in person, please be with us on the evening of the 17th and hear Swami Sarvadevananda speak on mythology. What did Swami Vivekananda mean by that?
Another question, again, I don't know how it's going to come out, but so when Krishna or Mother, decides to take a form, um, is that, do they decide, okay, I'm going to become a flower, I'm going to become a mountain, I'm going to become orange, or is it, is that a invalid question? I don't.
No, no, it's not an invalid question. It's just not a question that can be answered. Maya, Maya is a thing unto itself. When Brahman, or the cosmic mind, says, I am one, I shall become many, the gunas were in equilibrium up until that point. That thought produces the disequilibrium. I am one, I shall become many. Now, to understand what happens next, there's a very brief and wonderful description of the cosmology of the Gita, the cosmology that Krishna is speaking from, in the back of Swami Prabhavananda's translation of the Gita, his and Christopher Isherwood's. It's called The Cosmology of the Gita, and it's about Sankhya. Sankhya means counting or enumeration. As the gunas go into their incredible, subtle commingling and compounding, they become uncontainable at some point, and therefore Mahat, the great cause, it bursts forth. Okay, in Vedanta, it's called Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha contains this incredible compounding and agitation, and it becomes hot. Hiranyagarbha can no longer contain it. It bursts forth as Jagat. This is what the astrophysicists call the Big Bang. And when it first happens, there is no thing. There is only a state of existence called plasma, which is vibration at an unbelievably high rate, both in amplitude and complexity. It slowly cools and things begin to form. Now, is this just a reality for the Vedas and the astrophysicists? No. In 1306, Meister Eckhart, the great German mystic and a realized soul, said that he had experienced the nature of creation. And he said, in the ground of being, which was his name for Brahman, the unnameable, it's simply the ground of being. In the ground of being, there began a boiling. This was his word. He used the word Latin word bolito. It became so intense that it became ebolito, explosively boiled over. The image is very like what we might think of as the top of a pressure cooker actually blowing off and the contents just scattering everywhere because it's too hot to contain, too much pressure. So then we are contained, as Swami Vivekananda says in his talk in Jnana Yoga on evolution. Each of us, each individual being is contained as a seed in that plasma, somehow. And everything that will happen and become afterwards is contained in that seed. It is involute in that seed and begins its evolution. So here we sit on a Tuesday evening, May 10th, 2022, according to the astrophysicists, and an approximation is the same in the Vedas, 13.7 billion years after that first. We, you, each one of you, this too, has been slowly and slowly evolving. We're eons old. So Maya, that which is the appearance, is very persuasive. As Krishna says, my Maya is very hard to penetrate. But he says, if you will be persistent, I'll get right behind it and make it happen for you. And so that's how it happens. And that's why these great ones that we're about to read more about appear to unchain us and set us free from the appearance.
Thank you for that wonderful summary.
Anything else from anyone? Okay, dears.
Sure.
Please read
This-
on.
This type of discussion on Brahman Maya, Shiva Shakti, Purusha Prakriti is mysterious to us. We read or hear these words but cannot comprehend their relationship till we unveil the mystery through the experience of oneness. The lives of Ramakrishna and Holy Mother can help us understand to some extent how God and the Divine Mother, Shiva and Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti function on the dualistic plane.
Would you read that over from the beginning?
Sure. This type of discussion on Brahman Maya, Shiva Shakti, Purusha Prakriti is mysterious to us. We read or hear these words, but cannot comprehend their relationship till we unveil the mystery through the experience of oneness. The lives of Ramakrishna and Holy Mother can help us understand to some extent how God and the Divine Mother, Shiva and Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti function on the dualistic plane. In Bodhasara, Narahari Acharya used an analogy to explain this phenomenon. When a newly married bride goes to her husband's home, she is so shy that she wears a veil and cannot talk to her husband in front of anyone. But she feels united with him through her heart and loves to see him through her veil. Similarly, when duality dissolves in the heart of a spiritual aspirant, he experiences union with the Atman or God. But with a view to playing or interacting with God, he separates himself from the divine and begins to worship him and with love and devotion. In fact, before illumination, duality is delusion and bondage. But after illumination, duality is sweet and beautiful.
In the beginning, sour toil, delusion and bondage.
Bondage.
But afterwards,
It's sweet and beautiful.
and beautiful.
Yes.
But as Ramakrishna says, that skilled singer cannot keep her voice always on the highest note. So we fall back into a higher form of ordinary awareness, and we still experience the karma that Swayam asked about. It's a thing of the body. The body, Sri Krishna says, is his creation. for his own purposes as the Atman. Don't think you own it. Don't think it's yours. Don't think it's that it is his instrument. And so it experiences exaltation, joy, happiness, bliss, and also sorrow, suffering, pain. All that will go on, but your relationship to it is different. And you feel very, very comfortable in talking to the divine presence about what you are experiencing. You become very comfortable in sharing your joy and exaltation, that which this unit is experiencing, this Stardust spacesuit, and uncomplaining bitterly about the sorrow and the suffering. As Sri Ramakrishna says, you are the divine's child. You can speak to the divine presence as your mother and father. Anything from anyone about any of that? All right, dear, please read on.
Yes. It is for the sake of the Atman or the self that every human being loves someone or something. This Atman pervades every being and everything. So through it, people feel connected to their husbands, wives, children, money, home, and so on.
And if you don't believe this is true,
Very true, Brother Shankara.
just back into someone's Ferrari. They don't know it, but the reason they love that Ferrari is because it is made of the self. They think it is a thing. But if you back into their Ferrari and dent that fender, oh, they will just be beside themselves. You'll see how devoted they are to that vehicle. How much devotion. So when he mentions husband, wife, children, and then money, home, and so on, that's what I'm getting at.
Exactly.
It's all the Atman pervades everything and everyone, every being and everything. So through it, people feel connected to their husbands, wives, children, money, home, and so on. Oh my God. That's why I feel connected. This is what Yajnavalkya goes on about at some length in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Great Forest Upanishad. He gives his wife Maitreyi the best of his wisdom in a long dissertation about the nature of the self and the fact that the reason we care about anything, love it, are devoted to it, work for it, all of that is because it is the self. Any comments or questions? So read just that last again and then.
Sure. It is for the sake of the Atman or the self that every human being loves someone or something. This Atman pervades every being and everything. So through it, people feel connected to their husbands, wives, children, money, home, and so on. According to the Vedantic tradition, one can establish a relationship with God in three ways. First, Tasivaham, or I am his, third person. Second, Tavaivaham, or I am yours, second person. And third, Tvamevaham, or I am you, first person.
Now,
In the first,
now
yes.
Hanuman, when asked by Rama, Rama said, "How do you see me?" And Hanuman gave all three of these answers. When I'm in my ordinary state of consciousness, I'm yours.
Yes.
When I'm in the higher state of consciousness in meditation, you are mine. And then in my state of transcendental or Turiya consciousness, I am you and you are me, which is the same thing that Meister Eckhart said when he said, the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. So this is known to the mystics throughout the world and throughout time, all three of these. So read those again, please.
Yes. According to the Vedantic tradition, one can establish a relationship with God in three ways. First, tasyavaham, or I am his, third person. Second, tavai vaham, or I am yours, second person. And third, tvamevaham, or I am you, first person. In the first kind of relationship, devotees look upon God as separate, though God is invisible. They pray for God's favor. This is the beginning of religion. In the second, devotees feel that God is near and dear, and they behave with God like a close relative. In the third, devotees lose their self-identity and their egos merge into God consciousness. The two become one. The lover and the beloved are lost in love.
It's Rabia says, when I entered God. Those are her very words as translated by Daniel Ladinsky. When I entered God. That is to say, there was no longer any Rabia. She returned to her ordinary consciousness. And so otherwise she wouldn't write those poems. But when I entered God. Any comments or questions on what's been said? This is so central to this idea that the Swami is developing. Okay, please.
Sure. I will read that one more time, Brother Shankara. In the first kind of relationship, devotees look upon God as separate, though God is invisible. They pray for God's favor. This is the beginning.
I think that's a typo. I think it means indivisible. I don't think it's invisible.
No, God is invisible.
No, I think it's
indivisible.
I think it's a typo. They see God as separate, even though God is indivisible, cannot be divided into one and two.
Could be. Yes.
I don't think it means invisible.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's indivisible. Okay. So please read it as indivisible.
Okay, in the first kind of relationship, devotees look upon God as separate, though God is indivisible. That's right. You cannot divide him. Yes. Divisible. They pray for God's favor. This is the beginning of religion. In the second, devotees feel that God is near and dear, and they behave with God like a close relative. In the third, devotees lose their self-identity and their egos merge into God consciousness. The two become one. The lover and the beloved are lost in love. This is called samadhi or divine communion. That makes sense, Brother Shankara. Definitely. The great devotee Hanuman described this relationship. O Lord, when I identify myself with the body, I am your servant. When I consider myself to be an individual soul, I am part of you. And when I look upon myself as the Atman, I am one with you. This is my firm conviction.
This
Beautiful.
was his answer to Rama when Rama asked him, Hanuman, how do you look on me? How do you see me? This was Hanuman's answer. Please read it again, dear.
Yes, the great devotee Hanuman described this relationship. Oh Lord, when I identify myself with the body, I am your servant. When I consider myself to be an individual soul, I am part of you. And when I look upon myself as the Atman, I am one with you. This
And
is my
as the servant, what was Hanuman able to accomplish simply by taking Rama's name?
chanting.
He jumped. He leapt from the tip of India to Lanka. He simply by taking Rama's name. This is what is said in the Ramayana. We can buy it or not as we see fit. But that's the story, that Hanuman accomplished these great things simply by the power of his belief in Rama's name. I am your servant. Rama, I take your name.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Yeah, I like that key word in there is, that is my conviction.
Yes.
No question.
This is my firm conviction. Conviction is born of what? Of experience. Conviction does not come. Provisional faith comes by thinking, by manana. Conviction only comes by experience, by insistence on the truth until that truth is the reality for you. There is no other reality possible anymore. It is my firm conviction. And notice that it is in these three bhavas, these three attitudes all at once, embodied in one being. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Swayam. Thank you. All right, dears.
This statement is the best explanation of the different phases of spiritual consciousness. Ramakrishna knew who Holy Mother was, and Holy Mother knew Ramakrishna's true nature. Once Naresh Chandra Chakrabarti, one of Holy Mother's disciples, went to Jairambati, wishing to accept his worship. The mother said to him, I love yellow flowers, and the master loves white flowers. Please get both kinds of flowers from Kishori. Naresh rushed to Kishori, later Swami Parameshwarananda, and got the flowers from him, and then returned to find the mother waiting at the same spot. Following the silent instructions of the mother, Naresh offered yellow flowers at her left foot and white flowers at her right foot. Naresh then fervently prayed, Mother, I offer to you the results of all my actions in this earthly life and also hereafter.
Now, what is he doing? He's doing exactly what Sri Krishna says to do in the Gita. Please read those words again, what he says he's doing.
Ramakrishna knew who Holy Mother was, and Holy Mother knew Ramakrishna's true nature. Once Naresh Chandra Chakrabarti, one of Holy Mother's disciples, went to Jairambati. Wishing to accept his worship, the mother said to him, I love yellow flowers, and the master loves white flowers. Please get both kinds of flowers from Kishori. Naresh rushed to Kishori, later Swami Parameshwarananda, and got the flowers from him, and then returned to find the mother waiting at the same spot. Following the silent instructions of the mother, Naresh offered yellow flowers at her left foot and white flowers at her right foot. Naresh then fervently prayed, Mother, I offer to you the results of all my actions in this earthly life and also hereafter.
This is the perfect prayer. It relieves him of all karma. It relieves his self of all karma. This is what's meant when it's said that the Master and Holy Mother came to unchain us and set us free. Unchain us from our karma. We have only to accept their invitation and make it a reality for ourselves by manana and nididhyasana. Manana becomes meditation. Manana starts as contemplation. It then becomes concentration, and concentration becomes meditation. So slowly and slowly, we get to the point where we get this firm conviction. And then we practice nididhyasana, which is the same as satyagraha, insistence on that truth. That is the only truth. There is no other truth. Everything else is a lower truth. And so this becomes illumination. We've got a few minutes left. Any comments or questions from anyone? All right, here we done.
Okay. Swami Gambirananda wrote, by accepting his worship that day, the mother disclosed indirectly to him the truth of the unity of Shiva and Shakti in her holy person. She wanted the white flowers for the snow white Shiva, who was identical with Sri Ramakrishna, and the yellow ones for the golden colored Shakti as embodied in herself.
And Radha.
Radha. Also Parvati, right, Brother Shankara? Parvati or Radha, Durga,
all of them.
all of them are the Shakti.
But Radha, we remember Radha wore those yellow garments.
Krishnas, yes. One day in Dakshineshwar, the master was seated on his small cot and Holy Mother was sweeping his floor. Holy Mother asked the master, who am I to you? Without a second thought, the master replied, you are my blissful mother. Divine Mother. Swami Parameshwarananda recorded, once a disciple asked the mother, how do you regard the master? She remained silent for a while and then gravely answered, I regard him as my son. Another day, the mother said to me, know for certain that the master and I are one. Don't see us separately.
Please read those words again.
Yes. Swami Parameshwarananda recorded.
Go back to Gambirananda.
Swami Gambirananda wrote, by accepting his worship that day, the mother disclosed indirectly to him the truth of the unity of Shiva and Shakti in her holy person. She wanted the white flowers for the snow white Shiva, who was identical with Sri Ramakrishna, and the yellow ones for the golden colored Shakti as embodied in herself.
Just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
There is online, you can find it on our website, but you can also find it on the Vedanta Society of Southern California's YouTube channel, Swami Sarvadevananda speaking as Sri Ramakrishna, speaking on Sri Ramakrishna as Shiva. And it is such a charming talk because he becomes positively childlike in speaking of the Master in this way. So simple, so direct, so loving. So if you want to know something more of Swami Sarvadevananda, listen to that talk. If you don't know Sarvadevananda and want to know who's coming to see us on May 16th, just 6 days from now, listen to that talk. It will lift you right up. Sri Ramakrishna as Shiva. Okay, please go ahead, dear.
One day in Dakshineshwar, the master was seated on his small cot and Holy Mother was sweeping his floor. Holy Mother asked the master, "Who am I to you?" Without a second thought, the master replied, "You are my blissful mother." Swami Parameshwarananda recorded, once a disciple asked the mother, "How do you regard the master?" She remained silent for a while and then gravely answered, "I regard him as my son." Another day, the mother said to me, "Know for certain that the master and I are one. Don't see us separately." One day in Dakshineshwar, Hide jokingly asked Holy Mother, "Aunt, don't you call the uncle father?" Immediately she replied, "Why do you speak of him as father only? He is my mother, father, friend, relative, and everything else."
See, she just lists off the Babas. These are the ways of being with the divine. One can select, and Sri Ramakrishna recommends that we select one of these. Why do you say father only? That's the parent Baba, father or mother. He is my friend, relative, and everything else.
And everything else. From Ramakrishna's viewpoint, Holy Mother was the mother of the universe. And from Holy Mother's perspective, Ramakrishna was the embodiment of all gods and goddesses. Brother Shankara, it's about 8:28. You want me to put a stop there so that...
Yes, please, dear.
That way next week, are we having next week, Tuesday night discussion about this book, or do we postpone it to the following Tuesday?
Yeah, it'll be, well, Tuesday night.
Sarvadevananda is
That's
speaking.
the 17th. That's the night that Swami Sarvadevananda will be speaking in the chapel.
That's right.
So it'll be on Zoom. So thank you for noting that. There will be no class next Tuesday night.
Okay.
There will be class on Monday night. There will be, let's see, Wednesday night.
How about Wednesday night too? Sarvadevananda will be here in Atlanta.
We'll announce this in the newsletter, but I think there probably will not be class on Wednesday night.
Okay. Sounds good.
Wednesday night. The Swami won't be speaking. He'll be getting ready to leave the next morning. No, we probably will have the Jnana Yoga class.
Okay.
I think the Swami would want us to go ahead.
Go ahead and, okay.
So it'll only be on Tuesday night that we won't have class. We won't have the mother class. We'll have the mother speaking as Swami Sarvadevananda, as Swami Prabhavananda said when he asked, when somebody was complimenting him on speaking, he said, "Who spoke?" And the answer was the mother. She is all things and all actions, as it says in the Chandi. So, any final comments or questions from anyone? And please do be forthcoming if there's anything at all that you would like to say. All right, dears.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
As always, Thank you, Haima, for your so capable reading.
I'm honored, Brother Shankara. Thank you.
And no class next Tuesday. Thank you, Haima, for pointing that out. And that'll be in the newsletter also. So if there are no further comments or questions, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Any final thought or concern or question from anyone? All right, dears. So glad you were with us tonight. Yes?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Triguna.
in day-to-day life, we come across so many questions, difficulty, hurt. And so how do we think? I think sometimes somebody hurts me. I think that is my lesson to get detached. It is his doing that I have to, for my own self, for me, to become detached. Is this the right thinking or not?
Of course, it's a correct way to think, dear. There are higher ways to think of it, but until we reach those higher ways of thinking, that is a very good way to think about it. As Holy Mother says, you will come to see all suffering as a blessing.
That's what I think.
Yes.
It's for my own good. Yes.
Well, we have to think who is speaking, dear. Who is for my own good. It is to free the Atman from the idea that...
From the bondage, yes.
Yes, from the bondage.
Yes.
So that's who's speaking. When you say, it is for my own good, it is for the Atman's own good. It is for the good of the self.
Yes.
In fact, there is no Triguna Shah. Triguna Shah will soon disappear. And everything having to do with Triguna Shah will disappear, except the mental impressions that are left from this lifetime. And that's true of all of us. It's not just you.
The mental...
The Stardust spacesuit is a very transitory thing. So everything that it experiences, this Stardust spacesuit, is just something that arises and passes away. And like you said, so I must be detached from it.
Yes.
I must not hang on to it or think that it has anything more than a momentary importance, if that at all.
And the one you said, that the mental impression, that will carry over to another body.
If indeed you need to take another body.
No
you've
way,
taken shelter, you've taken refuge with Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna came to unchain you and set you free. So there's the promise that because you've taken refuge in the Master and Mother, that they will set you free and you will not need to take another body. So those mental impressions may go, as they say, on the solar path to Brahmaloka or Ramakrishna Loka, where the perfection will be completed and everything will be released, and all of these mental impressions burnt in the fire of knowledge. This is what Swami Vivekananda says happens to those who are very near perfection. Swami Vivekananda says that very explicitly in his talk, The Real and the Apparent Man, which is the last talk of his series of talks collected as Jnana Yoga, the 15th chapter of Jnana Yoga. He says, those who are nearly perfect will go on the solar path, the path of the saints, and they will be guided to Brahmaloka, or Sri Ramakrishna said in his own lifetime and in his own words that he had prepared a place for those who had taken refuge in him, to which you can go after leaving this bodily existence. So this is one of the reasons to take refuge in these great incarnations.
Okay. And is it the easiest path to keep on repeating mentally my mantra throughout the day?
Yes.
Because I had
It's called Sahaja Yoga, dear, the easy path.
Yeah.
It's not the fastest path. But as Swami Vivekananda said, it is the surest path. And it is a lovely path, because the more we repeat that mantra, the more the mantra reveals itself to us, the more we understand what is in that mantra. Not only just the name of some form of the divine, our chosen ideal, but also the other seed words that contain the immense power, as these are, though they are not specifically names, they are names of form, of the formless. And so as Sri Chaitanya says, various are thy names, O Lord, in each and every name thy power resides. And that power is so far greater than any impediment to its manifestation. So the more we repeat our mantra, and the more that mantra becomes a reality for us, the freer and freer we become, till at the point of leaving this body, there's just no question about where we'll go. We won't want to return here.
Yes.
Why would we want to return here? As Mother says, why would you want to return to a human body?
Yes.
Why would you want to return to this realm of duality? Why?
Yeah, there is no desire. The only desire is to not come. That's it.
Well, you have the full answer to the riddle. So now just do it, Triguna. Just do it.
Thank you.
As Swami Turiyananda said to his disciple on the street of New York, who was complaining about the difficulties of the mind, Turiyananda just shouted at him right there on the streets of New York, well, then stop it. And then he gave him instructions as to what to do instead, which he'd already given him, but he repeated them.
Yes.
So just, we can stop the mind and its incessant chatter. Actually, what we do is we sink below it, sink below that level of chatterboxness by repeating our mantra.
Yeah.
We sink toward the silence.
Okay. That helps.
Thank you, Triguna. Thank you, Triguna, for asking the question. I'm sure it was of use to everyone to hear that question and the response.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? I'm so glad that Triguna brought that up.
I can tell one thing, Brother Shankara, negative experiences are far more purifying to our heart than the pleasurable ones.
Mm-hmm.
Any negative one is very purifying to the heart. It does. We will get there. As we face more and more, the ego dies. And then, as we meditate and do other things, and it just feels like there is a great reason. You learn a lesson for every negative experience. You learn a greatest lesson in the world. And then you are more in peace. You won't get reactive anymore. You respond with calmness and bliss.
As Sri Ramakrishna says, as we stop believing in the ego, it doesn't disappear or die. He says it becomes like a shy child. Now, in other eras, in other yugas, it might actually die. But in the Kali Yuga, at this end of the Kali Yuga, he says because we are so dependent on food, by which he means sensory stimulation of all kinds, because we are so dependent on that, he says the ego continues to arise. We know not from where. But he says, when we stop believing in it and believing in the truth behind it, then it becomes like a shy child. And we become free of its manifestation, which is the manifestation of the gunas.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Thank you so much.
So anything else from anyone? All right, dears. There will be class tomorrow night, Jnana Yoga, and then there will be class on Saturday. And on Sunday, we have the annual meeting of the congregation. And I hope all of you who can will attend in person. And there'll be an invitation in the newsletter to let us know that you're coming in person, if indeed you are, so that we get exactly the right amount of food, or approximately the right amount of food, to feed the number of people who come. Because after the annual meeting of the congregation, for those who are physically here, the Board of Trustees offers you a lunch and in thanks for your membership in the congregation and your attendance at the annual meeting of the congregation. So that meeting will be Zoomed, of course. There'll be a Zoom transmission of the annual meeting from the chapel. But if you're able, please come this Sunday at 11 a.m. And if you can, plan to stay for lunch afterwards, which ends approximately 1:30, 2 o'clock. I mean, you can come and go as you please, but we try to wind things up by 1:30 or 2 o'clock. The annual meeting lasts approximately from 11 to noon, and then we come into the monastery and the fellowship hall for a catered lunch. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, dears. Until tomorrow night, for those who choose to attend. Good night again, and thank you again, Haima, for the wonderful reading.
I'm honored, Brother Shankara. Thank you. Thanks for giving me the chance to do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Until the next time.
Good night.
Good night.